Okay, so we are doing a follow-up on the presentation that we did about one of our clients who actually lives upstairs. She has been smoking for a really long time. She has a lot of other health conditions that kind of make her kind of a little bit sad and depressed. So she uses smoking kind of as that crutch to kind of get through that. She also has some issues with her family, which also puts a lot of stress on her. So we actually got her into our program, which is called Life Without Tobacco, because she just finished her work term. So she was in a program where she was working and it ended after like 2 years. So she all of a sudden had all this free time, and I would see her every day in the lobby, and I was like, all right, well, Linda, it's time to do this thing. So she was totally on for it. She was definitely interested in quitting because of how I related all the secondhand smoke to what it was doing to her little dog. She loves her little dog. She dresses it up every single day. She takes it out for these long walks with her little tutu dresses on. It's like her best friend. And she was very like, kind of like, wow, I didn't realize that I was,
harming the dog.
Yeah, harming the dog by smoking. So we also talked about some ways maybe that she could deal with some of the like hard, difficult emotions that she was dealing with her family.
And she really wasn't open to any of the suggestions that that I offered her. She kind of feels that like maybe meditation is a little, how she put it, new agey to her. And she also jokes about how like deep breathing exercises is going to make her pass out. So like she's really, that really wasn't her thing. So did the patient take action based on our conversation? She absolutely did. So she's not quit right now. She is still currently smoking. However, she has definitely been trying. She has had 2 quit attempts, definitely, that she did let me know that she did go 24 hours without smoking. But she is having a little bit more of an issue with her health. So that's why she's kind of like having issues right now. But she is now thinking about it in a different way. So it's not only just Lolly, her dog, who she's thinking about. She's had an IHSS worker, her in-house helper, who she's had for a few years, who has a great relationship with her. She doesn't want to smoke around her either. So she's pretty much in a mindset to quit smoking. Another thing is that she's kind of worried with winter coming, which is our rainy season. She doesn't know what to do now that she won't be able to smoke outside. So it's just another really great way that we can kind of spin it for her to get quit again. So any follow-up or next step plans with Linda are going to be, Linda is going to be followed up on a regular basis as a part of this program. But she also sees other providers. So she sees Angela regularly. For another program she is, and she does see providers here for her medical care. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that kind of we're all on the same boat in encouraging her to quit smoking and kind of like giving her the reasons that she chose to quit smoking, just so it kind of reinforces her everywhere she's at, whether she's with me or if she's in Angela's program or if she's seeing her doctor or nurse next door. So, and then number 5 was on a scale of 1 to 5. Would you rate these recommendations that you were given helpful? I would say absolutely. I would give it a 4. And the only reason I didn't give it a 5 was because maybe not everything was 100% applicable for our population.
Great. Thanks. That's great to hear. It's fun to hear the follow-up and see the progress, and that she's really made some attempts to both quit and then really in a different place in her journey with quitting tobacco altogether. Any clarifying questions for Angela or Humberto? Can you remind me, I can't remember how long this patient has been smoking. What's her history?
Oh, 45 years already.
Yeah, long time.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Any other clarifying questions? Angela and Humberto, do you have any questions you'd like addressed by our experts today? Things like of what to do next or how to help or other barriers you're running into specifically, or I'll just open up for discussion?
I don't think we have any questions on, I don't think we're hitting any barriers with her. I think with her, it's a matter of that constant connecting and the, compassionate follow-up with her, because she does have a very difficult family life. So we, are often checking in with her on how she's doing, and then we're sliding the smoking discussion into those sort of interactions as well. So we're trying to, be that resource for her that's, non-judgmental and accepting. And I think that that's helping her, that's her style, that she responds to that.
Yeah, and I think we all kind of figured that, even including her, that this is going to be more of a marathon than it is going to be a race. So definitely, I think just as long as she has support, she's pretty much going to stay on the path to quitting.
And we also were helping her. Another thing is, I think she finds it easier to not smoke when she's working. So we've connected her with some vocational resources and ideas for finding some employment, something to kind of get her out of the house and keep her busy.
Yeah, that's great. That's huge, helping with the employment part. That's a great idea. Yeah, really great. And the value of like,
when
go ahead.
At work, when she's in an office, she can't smoke.
Yeah, right. That's great. It really helps with that social isolation part of things too. Yeah, that's great. Faculty, anybody have thoughts or, yeah, Frank, I see your hand.
Yeah, I do. So when I encounter someone like this who is still smoking in spite of all these medical problems and all these obvious things that smoking is causing, I really focus on the relationship that they have with a cigarette. And that echoes what we were just talked about in the presentation, is that she views this as a friend that's doing all these things for her that she can't do herself. So that's the whole key to this, is she not only views the cigarette as this friend, but it's a friend that's doing things she can't do on her own. So you have to kind of unpack what that is. And she's probably going to come down and tell you some kind of version of it. It's managing all my stress, or it's helping me cope or with life. So I always frame this type of situation in terms of a relationship. And it's almost like an abusive relationship, because in most cases, the person thinks that they can't do all this stuff and they have to stick with the other person and put up with all their crap because they're doing all these things that they can't do themselves. The reality is, and we all know this, is that the person being abused usually is the one who's stronger, knows how to do all this stuff, can cope and take care of themselves. They're just giving credit to the other person. So what I do with this individual, and I know this may sound strange to most of you, but it's very powerful and it does work, is have them break up with the cigarette. And in many respects, most cases, what I have them do is write a letter to the cigarette from the perspective of, been dependent on you all these years. I thought that you were doing all this wonderful stuff for me, but now I realize that you're really hurting me and I need to get rid of you and kick you out of my life. So the three things you want to ask her to help frame this is, you're perceiving this as a friend, but what kind of friend steals all your money, destroys your health, and ruins your self-esteem? And then ask it in that way, and then that will kind of, that's an open-ended question that will kind of lead her to hopefully thinking about this in a more intense way, and make her kind of justify why she's continuing to do this. So I know this is getting in a little bit of the psychological realm, but that's what I find to be when everything else doesn't work and when all these other issues going on, that's what's keeping her hooked. So in some way, shape, or form, if she doesn't want to write a letter, something that she can do that is powerful to her that says, I'm done, it's over, goodbye. So whatever you can come up with her, you can do. I've had people, I know someone that had a funeral, they literally buried the cigarettes, So it can be something as outrageous as that, but it worked because for that person, it was finally done. And if you frame it like a relationship, I think we've all been at least one relationship where we kept hanging on, thinking, I have to stay with the person, knowing underneath it all that it was really hurting you. So if you kind of frame it that way, I think maybe she'll latch onto that and then come up with some really personal, powerful way where she can finally one day just say, it's done.
Absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense because I don't feel that the nicotine addiction is the number one issue with her. I feel it's the psychological issue that is her number one reason for smoking. Because she does say, I'll see her and she'll say, I smoked today because my son called me and I had a 3-hour conversation with him, and it's like, it's not because your body needed a cigarette at that time, it's because you think you needed a cigarette at that time. So definitely maybe using the breakup scenario or maybe even the funeral scenario might be something that would definitely help her.
Ask her first what she feels would be a powerful way to end it. And then if she can't come up with anything, maybe suggest a funeral. And another way you can enter this conversation, since you guys know her so well, is to ask her what would happen to you if all of a sudden tonight every cigarette on the planet disappeared?
Wow. Great.
What would you do? What would happen to you? How would you deal with that? Because in effect, when you quit, all the cigarettes on the planet have disappeared for you. So if you ask her that, and interestingly enough, 95% of the people that I've said that to look at me, they think about it for a minute, and they say, well, I guess I just figure out a way to survive and I'd keep going. But you want them to say that rather than you telling them that. So if you ask that question, it's an interesting way to kind of enter that conversation. So you might want to try that too.
Okay, I like that one. It's sort of asking her to picture a future with her and no cigarettes and what that would look like.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's great. Rich?
Yeah, just a real quick couple of comments. Those are fantastic, Frank. Love those. Fingers crossed for a good year for the Steelers this year. I'm a Pittsburgh boy. I knew I'd get a thumbs up from that, Frank. A couple comments. I often emphasize how courageous and heroic these efforts are because people who have addictions or habits that are hard to kick feel bad about themselves, low self-esteem. Frank mentioned that. And I think turning that, how courageous it is to tackle this is terrific. Thus, quit attempts are never, that relapse are never failures. The more quit, I know you've talked before about how many quit attempts are needed before people are able to quit permanently. And I tell folks, every time you quit and relapse, you learn something new. And I help them, what did you learn from that? What happened, et cetera. So learn those lessons. Celebrate every quit attempt. The more you make, the closer you are to quitting permanently. It's always a little tricky what to do with people who have, well, I've cut down. I'm smoking less. I think it's really important to emphasize in a positive way. That's a good step. We know just scientifically that there's not a lot of evidence that it improves your health outcomes that much for people who are long-time smokers. So I think the link there is that'll when you get to the moment of quitting, that will make it easier. Your nicotine levels will be less. So celebrate quit attempts. If people have cut down, it's worth celebrating, but it's always put it in the context of, well, that'll make it easier to quit, but we still need to work towards that. And then the final point, and I'm not sure this will be useful, but it's just worth mentioning. Nicotine is always playing a role in smoking. Years and years ago, they took nicotine. Somebody tried a nicotine-free cigarette. Nobody used it. Nobody got addicted. Nobody felt that was their friend. So the nicotine is playing a role. That's the brain part of it. And even though she's not a medication fan, she might get to the point where something like nicotine gum, when she's had that conversation with her son, she'd be willing to try. So just keep it in mind, even though she hasn't been receptive up till now. There might be one of the forms of medicine that would fit her pattern.